created this cluster with the name as K8s DevOps cluster, and this cluster was having the two worker nodes, and those two worker nodes are up and running over here. Now we need somehow to connect to this cluster. Okay, how to connect to this cluster? In case of the Docker, what we have done, we have directly done the SSH to one of the Linux machine, installed Docker over there, and started working on it. Okay. In case of Kubernetes, that facility is not there because uh, cloud provided Kubernetes cluster don't allow us to do the SSH on the master node. So they don't even provide access to the master node, but that is okay. There is one more way by which we can go ahead and connect to our cluster. That is nothing but over here you will see download the config file. Okay, so this config file is the one mm, through which we can connect to our cluster. Okay, so I'll show you how you can do it. So first of all you need to download it. Okay, once you download this file, don't worry about the content of this file at the very beginning. Let's not worry about it. Let's close this. So it looks like this is one of the YAML file. Let's close this out and open our mobile system. Any file you download, that will get enter the download section of your C users admin and downloads. You can go over here and see the file. So this is the file which got downloaded just now, or you can see the file directly on the download section here as well. Okay, in the download section you will see this is the file which we just downloaded. It's the today's state. Okay, so this file will help us in connecting to the Kubernetes cluster. So how to make use of this file? Okay, this is a kubeconfig file. Okay, we call this file as a kubeconfig file because this is the configuration of the Kubernetes. Means where is my Kubernetes cluster, what is the IP address, how many worker nodes, all information is stored within this. So the content about this file we will talk about later. So as this is the kubeconfig file, this will help us in connecting to the Kubernetes cluster. So where we have to keep it, because simply by keeping uh, over here will not help us. uh, okay, as we downloaded the kubeconfig file, let me show you some, let me go through some extra thing within this Kubernetes, then I will come back to this kubeconfig file one more time. Okay, that is nothing but the pod. Okay, now I'll just keep that kubeconfig part aside and let's first focus on this pod now. Once we understand what exactly is the pod, then we will go ahead and connect to our cluster. Okay, so pod within the Kubernetes is one of the smallest unit or smallest resource that we can create. Okay, in case of the Docker, what we have done, uh, we have directly go ahead and created a container. Okay, this is the Docker container. Okay, but Kubernetes directly don't create container. Okay, even though it is container management tool, but Kubernetes directly don't create any container. Kubernetes always create pod. Okay, and pod is nothing but one of the wrapper over the container. This is pod, just a moment, some, and this is the container. Okay, so within the pod there is container. There can be one container, two container, or more than that as well, but in ideal scenario one pod contains one container. So within the pod there will be container only. So you can consider pod is just a wrapper around the container, and it is one of the smallest unit that we can create within the Kubernetes world. Okay, in the documentation, as So in case of this Kubernetes, let's say there are three worker nodes. Okay, so we can deploy the three pods. Okay, so from now onwards I will always talk about the pod, not about the container, because whatever the commands that we are going to run in the Kubernetes cluster, all those commands are going to work on the pod only, not on the container. So but internally it is definitely a container, and that's where we call it as a container management tool. Okay, so let's say if you create the three pods, in that case each a single pod will get I mean to say those three pods will get distributed amongst the three worker nodes, and each and every node will get a pod. And if any of the worker node gets corrupted or shut down, that's okay for us, because we still have two other worker nodes, and on those two other worker nodes pods are up and running. Okay, and if you want to one thing you need to just keep in mind, that if you want to create a replica of the pod or replica of the container, okay, so by default we don't create any container, so we won't be able to create a replica of the container. So that's where the same type of container we will not add within a pod. Okay, means let's say this is the Python container within the pod, so we cannot have two Python container within the pod. uh, I'll show you with practical as well why it is not possible. But as of now, uh, two similar kind of containers cannot be part of a single pod. If you want to like replicate it, or if you want to scale it up, in that case instead of creating an extra container, directly go ahead and create an extra pod. That pod itself will have a container. And you will see one kubectl over here. What exactly is the kubectl? It is nothing but a command line tool to access the Kubernetes. Okay, the way we have executed all the Docker related commands with this, okay, like Docker container run -d, then each and every command related to the Docker was starting with the Docker, and this Docker is a command line tool in case of the Docker. Okay, in case of Kubernetes, each and every command will start with kubectl. Kubectl run this, kubectl delete, kubectl log. All those commands will always start with kubectl. So any Kubernetes related command is going to start with kubectl only. Kubectl is a command line tool, and this command line tool is to play with Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so we have to go ahead and install kubectl as well on our end, so that we can access to the Kubernetes cluster. So let's do step by step over here. First of all, let's download kubectl at our end. If you want to download it, let's go to browser, download kubectl for Windows, and let's say install and set up kubectl on Windows. So over here you can see a curl command. Just copy that curl command, and as of now we don't have kubectl over here, not found. So just download this kubectl at our end. So this kubectl.exe got downloaded over here. Now if you say kubectl exe, now you can see a output. We can see kubectl controls the Kubernetes cluster manager. Okay, just a moment. And once we download this, we just start to make use of it. But it's let me tell you one Windows feature as well, that if you keep this kubectl.exe over here, then you have to execute all your kubectl commands from this location only, because this file is present over here. But what if I want to execute this kubectl command from anywhere, any location, any directory? In that case, you need to make this available in the path directory. I mean to say path variable. The way we have echo dollar path in case of the this path variable in case of Unix. In the same way, there is a path variable in case of Linux, Windows as well. Okay, so let me show you how you can do that. So we just have downloaded our kubectl at which location. This is downloaded at this. Let me go to any of the folder, cd c colon users admin, let's say desktop, and let's say I'll create one folder over here, DevOps binary, and I'll copy this kubectl exe to this DevOps binary folder. Okay, now we got this file. So the same file you can see over here as well if you go to desktop. And this folder DevOps binary we created, and we got kubectl over here. Now just get this entire path. Okay, copy this entire path where kubectl is present, and just add it into the environment variable. So to add it into the environment variable, just type env. You will see edit the system environment variables over here, and you will see one path variable. Let's edit that and add the new one over here. Okay, so I have added a path over here just because I want to access kubectl from any location. That's where is my kubectl? I have provided at this location. Now if I execute my kubectl from any directory, things will work. Let's save everything over here. Okay, so let me delete this kubectl from home and mobile system, because this is no longer required now, because this is already copied to the desktop. And now if I run kubectl, it's still not found. Okay, I just need to uh, relaunch this mobile system. Let's close this and let me relaunch mobile system. It got launched. Now you can see this kubectl command is working fine from anywhere. Okay, and this is the same output. And if you want to see where exactly is the kubectl, means from which location it is picking, you can do kubectl, and as we have added this kubectl in the DevOps binary, so we are getting this output. Okay, so it's similar to the path variable in the Linux. Now kubectl got installed successfully, and we do have kubeconfig file as well along with us. Where is the kubeconfig file? That's in the download section. It's a YAML file. This is the kubeconfig file I'm talking about, which we just downloaded now. Okay, and we can make use of this kubeconfig file to connect to our cluster. So there are two ways of doing that. Okay, one is long cut, one is shortcut. I'll just go ahead with long cut first. That is nothing but, let's say, as I told you, within this Kubernetes cluster there are two worker nodes, okay, over here. And if you want to see the details about two worker nodes, you can see kubectl get nodes. And let's provide the config file location. This is our config file. Why we are providing this? Because this file is having an internal details to the Kubernetes cluster, how to connect to that Kubernetes cluster, that is defined and declared within this kubeconfig file. And that's where kubectl get node is just to list out all the worker nodes, and from which cluster we want to list out all the worker nodes, that is provided over here. Like this is the kubeconfig file, which means hyphen hyphen kubeconfig is nothing but one of the argument, and this is the value of that argument over here. Okay, so you can see I got this pull deops this. So I was having two worker nodes and we have created almost on the same time but yesterday. So that's where age is 23 hour. And if you see over here pull deops, within this pull deops the same two worker nodes, you can see starting sorry ending with 2 and ending with p over here. So these are the two worker nodes that we created yesterday, and those are even visible from the background as well, because now onwards we are always going to play with our mobile system only. We will not even touch this digital ocean. We just use this digital ocean to create the Kubernetes cluster, and that's all. Maybe sometime we can go ahead and see the dashboard and all, but definitely later on. But as of now we will make very minimal use of this digital ocean, and we are going to make use of only mobile system, and you can say a backend to connect and play with the Kubernetes cluster. So one way is like always provide this extra to connect to the Kubernetes cluster, but I cannot, means it's not good practice to write down this a big command and have this appended for all the commands. So that's where I'm going to set this somewhere so that I don't have to execute, or I don't have to provide this kubectl argument each and every time. Okay, so there is a way of doing that. I'll show you how. Let's go to the this directory. If you do ls-alt, when okay, let's say there is no such kube folder, I'll say. Okay, means in your case if there is no .cube folder, that is okay. We will start from scratch. Maybe I have I have done some practice earlier, so that's why this folder is available there. So what you have to do to avoid that hyphen hyphen kube config and provide that file name, go to your cd enter. So you will redirect it to this, create one folder with .cube, as this is the kube config, so we will create with .cube and copy that file over here, users. Okay, maybe I need to go to that location. Which location? Downloads location. And I just need to copy this to this .cube folder. Okay, so I'll just go to .cube again, and we just have copied the downloaded YAML file, and you just have to rename to this config. That's all. Okay, once you copy it, just rename it to the config, and that's all. That's where we call this file as a kubeconfig.cube, and within the .cube folder there is a config file. So in general we call this file as a kubeconfig because it always resides under the .cube folder. Now in my case, let's say I don't have my kubeconfig anywhere. Now it's present within the .cube folder. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and connect to your cluster kubectl get node, you can still see the output without providing the hyphen hyphen kubeconfig, because kubectl always go ahead and look for the kubeconfig file under the .cube folder, and that .cube folder is present over here. And as it is a hidden folder, that's where it will not be visible with ls, so that's where we have to do ls-l and d. This .cube folder is present over here, and there is a config file within that, and that config file is getting read every time whenever we are going to execute the kubectl, because that config file is all about how to connect to the cluster. Okay, so as of now, whatever steps we have done to connect to the cluster, is it clear? So now we are good with our connection. So it's very easy to connect to the Kubernetes cluster. And this is the one-time setup you don't have to do on the regular basis until and unless you recreate the cluster. Because if till the time you keep this cluster over here as it is, the config file you don't have to download daily. You don't have to do anything over there. Okay, that will remain same till the time this cluster is active. Once you delete this cluster and create new cluster, that time a new config will get generated and you have to download that new config file in that case. Okay, but we will not do so because I'll make use of this same cluster throughout our session. So I'll not recreate and all those things, but yes, but due to some reason, if you want to test it out or try out something new, in that case you have to like download that config file one more time if you create the cluster one more time. Okay, and if I go to this Kubernetes dashboard over here, so this is a front end you is available to us. Okay, and this front end is showing which all workloads are running. So these are the default workloads that are running. Even I haven't executed anything on this cluster. This is the brand new cluster which we just yesterday we created and today we just connected. We haven't done anything over here. So whatever you can see right now, like running equal to 6, then running equal to 2. So all these are the default pods that are generated or that are there within the Kubernetes cluster. Don't worry about daemon set deployments. We are just going to start with pods first, and then later we will talk about rest of the things like replica set. These are all the resources that we can create. In case of the Docker, we have seen we can create a volume, we can create a network, we can create a image. So those were the resources for the Docker. In case of the Kubernetes, there are a lot of resources that we are going to see, and the basic one is the pods. And once you understood pod, then rest of the things will be very easy to understand. Okay, so we will just start with pod first, and those like running equal to 15. So these are the system related pods which are running within our cluster. Okay, it's not a custom pods you can, and all those things you will definitely understood later. So as of now, let's go and select default over here. What exactly namespace is, we will come to it later on, but just select default, and within the default you don't see any pods. Okay, if I click on pods, there is nothing to display over here. Okay, so we will just start with pod first and understand how it is done and how to create that. Okay, now just to make this look little bit better, I have a practice of working with this some extra commands. If you go to this my GitHub documentation, I have provided some setup commands. Means I'm going to make use of the shortcut. Like every time I'm not going to type kubectl, I will type K only. K, I'll have alias to the kubectl, C for clear, H for history, and certain completion commands. Completion command is all about, let's say if you type kubectl get no, so automatically nodes will come in, get written on our screen. So that is nothing but auto completion commands you can consider. And this ps1 is I meant to say, if I do echo dollar ps1, it will just change the look of your terminal, nothing else. So you can see over here date, time, second is appearing over here. So it will just change the look which is mentioned over here. Okay, whatever the look you can see over here, that look will get changed with the ps1. That's all, nothing else. Okay, so let me copy paste everything. This is not there. Okay, not an issue, I'll check it later on, but let me export this. Okay, so the only the terminal look change, nothing else. Rest of the things will still remain the same. If you do the kubectl get nodes, you will see these two nodes are there, and k I have given an alias to the kubectl. Okay, so you can write kubectl or you can write k, both will work for you guys. Okay, if you want to use k, you have to set alias at your end. That's all. Now, how many pods we have? So kubectl get pods is to check how many pods are there on our system. Okay, so over here, as this is the brand new cluster, I don't have any pod in the default namespace. Namespace is a kind of a big topic, so we'll talk about later on. So you can see no resource found in the default namespace. So that's where I have selected within the dashboard default over here. Okay, as of now there are no pods, even in the front end as well. I don't see any pod over here. Okay, no resource found. Let's go ahead and create certain pods. Kubectl run, give a name of the pod as p1, and I want to create this pod p1 from nginx image. Okay, nginx image we already talked about. So what it is doing, it is going to create a pod p1, and as you know, this pod contains a container, and that container is going to get created from nginx image. Okay, till now we have directly go ahead and created a container from nginx image, but Kubernetes don't go ahead and create a container directly, so that's where we have to deal with the pod. So that's where you can see pod p1 got created, and if you see kubectl get pods, a pod is running over here. P1 we just created 47 seconds back, and this is into the running condition, so it means my pod is healthy. And same goes for this uh, dashboard. I have just created a pod p1 from image nginx, and this is running on this node. Okay, I'll tell you about the node, and we have created a minute ago. So whatever things you are going to do it over here, all those things will be captured in the dashboard as well. So directly from the dashboard you can see the container, sorry, you can see the workloads, you can see how many pods are there, how many deployments, replica set services, and other resources are there. Okay, so as of now we are into the basic condition, so let's go ahead and learn pod only. As you know, within this cluster there are two worker nodes. Okay, so we have created a pod p1. So who like a p1 will get shifted to the first one, or p1 will get shifted to the second one, means it's a scheduler part where this p1 pod is getting deployed. It can either go to the first node or it can either go to the second node. We don't worry about that on which node this pod gets shifted or deployed or created. We just worry about that our pod is healthy or not. That's all for us. Okay, so who is going to do this, uh, like which node it should pick for the deployment of pod p1? That is nothing but a scheduler, as we have seen in the I mean to say architecture of the Kubernetes. So scheduler is one of the component over the master node. That scheduler will decide where this pod will go, either on first worker node or either on second worker node. Okay, if you want to get more information about this pod, just to kubectl describe is all about getting and more information about the pod. So describe pod and which pod you want to means get more information from. So let's say I'll say kubectl describe pod p1, and let's wait for a second, and you will see some more information. Main is this event section के अंदर you have to just focus on. Okay, so you can see successfully assign pod p1 to this worker node. This is one of the worker node. Okay, so it got assigned successfully. So who is going to do assignment? Like default scheduler. So scheduler is a resource, or scheduler is a component in the master node who is going to decide that pod will go on which worker node. Okay, once this decision got completed successfully from the scheduler, then the request will go to the internally this scheduler will talk to the API server that okay, I have decided this worker node for P1. Then this information will be shared with an API server, and then API server will talk with the kubelet on that worker node. Each and every worker node will have a kubelet. Then within with the help of kubelet, uh, as you know that image was not there for the very first time on that worker node, so it has downloaded an image from the Docker Hub. So who is going to do each and everything? It's a container runtime job, but container runtime is doing all under the kubelet. So that's where you can see kubelet is one of the captain over the worker node who is going to manage all the things on the worker node. So it is going to pull an image, and now the successfully pulled image. So within the 11 seconds it has pulled an image, and it has created a container p1. It is saying container p1 because the pod p1 के अंदर container ही होता है, and it has started it. Okay, so these are the step by step things that got happened in the background. Okay, so first of all assignment part, then second is image pull part, then third is creating a container and starting it. So these are the steps that are involved while creating a pod. Okay, and if you go a little bit up, this output, you will see a name as p1 we have given, and it is assigned to this node, and IP address of this node is this. Then the status is running, at what time we have created or started, and what is the IP address of the pod. Each and every IP address, sorry, each and every pod will get an IP address. Okay, so the way container was having an IP address, over here pods are having an IP address. And what is the IP address of the container? It is similar to the pod IP address. So, जो भी pod का IP address होता है वही container का IP address होता है. Okay, and we have done it from, we have created a container from nginx image, and that's all we need to know right now from this information. Okay, so description is all about uh, the event section is means what is there in the event section, and some extra information like from which image it got created and what is the SHA code for that image. Then later on we can see the time and the labels we will see later, but okay, now we have created this pod p1. In a similar way I can create multiple pods from a same image. Okay, let's say if I try to create one more pod from the same image, I'm okay to do that. Only thing, the name of the pod should not be same. Earlier I have created p1, so I cannot create p1 again. Okay, I will get an error if I try to do so. If I try to create p1 again, you will see pod p1 already exists, so it will not allow to create p1 one more time. So for that matter you have to delete the previous p1 pod and create a new p1 pod. Okay, now we have two pods at our end over here, and you want to check more information. Hyphen o wide is nothing but give us some extra information about the pods. Okay, till now we used to see information this much, But as we are doing hyphen o wide, it is giving some extra information like what is the IP address of that pod, then on which worker node it got shifted. So these all things we can see. If I create one more pod, let's say P3, and then I'll create P4 as well, and let's do these things. It's container creating, and our pods are getting created successfully without any issue. So that's all what I wanted to say. And let's say if you are no longer require this pod P1, sorry P4, you can go ahead and delete this pod as well. Okay, so simply kubectl delete pod and name of the pod. So this is going to delete the pod for us. Okay, so we will not have P4 now, we have just P1, P2, P3. If you want to delete P3 as well, just provide the correct name, and that's all to delete it. Okay, all good till now about uh, the process, how we are going to create a pod, delete it, description, now all those things. Now we have this pods P1 and P2, and within this pod there is a container, and within the container Nginx processes are running. Okay, and if you want to see the logs of that pod, so similarly this kubectl logs P1, so it is going to fetch all the logs of the P1 pod. Okay, so these are the logs of the P1 pod, these are the logs of the P2 pod. So likewise, if you want to check for logs of any of the pods, then this command is going to help us. And execute. Okay, similarly if you want to go ahead and log into any of the pod. Okay, in case of the Docker, how we used to do it, Docker container execute hyphen it, name of the container, let's say C1, and bash. Okay, this is how we used to do it in case of the Docker. Similarly, in case of the container, we are going to use the execute hyphen it, name of the pod. Only thing, we are providing hyphen hyphen over here. This is a new way of providing a command to any of the pod. Okay, let's see, if I don't even define this, I will be able to log into it. But now you can see this is deprecated. Okay, use kubectl execute hyphen hyphen. So directly as well you can make use of it, but as it is deprecated, so that's where it's always go ahead and use the suggested commands. So that's where they suggested us to use hyphen hyphen. So now we are not getting any warning. See, the same thing, like we logged in into the it looks like we are within the pod, but uh, in reality we are within the container, and whatever things you have seen till now, like docker entry point .sh, entry point .d, whatever things we have seen in the docker section, once we log in, similar thing you can see over here, like user share nginx html. You might have remember about this welcome to nginx page. So same thing is up over here as well, because it's nothing but a container only. Let's log out from this container, or you can say pod. I will say pod only because in Kubernetes there are pods only. Now let's talk about certain labels as well. There is one fundamental of labels within this Kubernetes world. Okay, let's say if you go to any of the shopping mall, and always you will see some sticker over the t-shirts or some any of the clothes. Okay, and there will be some labels attached to that, and that will show some information about that, let's say shirt. So the size equal to large or size equal to small, or whatever might be the size, but it will be written over that label, right? So that label over that t-shirt is all about giving some extra information about that t-shirt, right? Similarly, we can have some labels to the pods as well, okay? And this label that we are going to attach to the pod is mainly for an information purpose, but there is lot of use cases of that label that we will see once we are learning the services deployment. But as of now, just understand that we can provide label to the pod, and that label will refer to and just information, okay? So let's say as I have created pod, how many pods we have? I think two pods we have. Get pod, kubectl delete pod. Let's see, I'll say p2 को मैं delete कर देता हूँ, and let's play with a single pod only. Get pod hyphen hyphen. Let's look into the labels, okay? By default, as you know, while creating a pod, I never defined any of the label, but by default a label will get attached to the pod, that is run equal to, this run equal to will be common, and name of the pod, okay? So this is the default label which will get attached to the pod. But let's say I want to have some custom label, whatever I will define, that should be there within the attached to the pod. So let's say let's delete this label of this pod, kubectl label pod name. Okay, so kubectl label pod and pod name, run minus is nothing but, let's say if you want to remove this label, then just say run the first thing minus is to remove it. Okay, so this label will get removed. You can see unlabeled. Again, if I do show labels, so I don't have any label now. Now I want to attach a label that is nothing but, I'll have done the control C, kubectl label pod p1. I'll say type equal to front end. So I want to attach this label to the pod. So it is labeled now. I have done the control C, kubectl get pod. Now you can see I have just changed the label of that pod. The use case of the label we will see it later on, but just understand that there is a label thing which is attached to the pod mainly for the information purpose, and we can delete a label, we can add new label at runtime without any issue. So the way I have added this label, I can add one more label as well. It's not like only one label supported. Let's say let's say I want to add one more label, so equal to dere, let's say. So this pod will be having the two labels attached to it. Let's say a show labels now. Okay, so you can see now I got two labels, Subodh equal to dere. So these are the custom labels, can be anything, whatever the requirement of our project, that label we can provide over here. So hyphen hyphen show labels will show you information about labels along with the pod as well. Then we will talk about this dry run later. Okay, let's say kubectl get pod. How many pods we are having? Let's run, create one more time, kubectl run nginx. So let's say I have created second pod, I have created, let's say, third pod and fourth as well. Let's say we are having a lot of pods over here. let's say hundreds of pods, thousands of pods over here, and I want to delete all the pods. So how I used to delete earlier, kubectl delete pod p1, p2, p3, p4. Likewise, I used to delete earlier. But let's say there are thousands of the pods, so you cannot provide a name of the pod. Uh, like it will be the very big command. So you can do hyphen hyphen all, and that is going to delete all the pods over here. Okay, so kubectl delete pod. You want to delete all the pods, so just make use of hyphen hyphen all, which is going to delete everything for us, and all the pods are now deleted. There is nothing within this pod. Sorry, there is nothing within this cluster now, within the default namespace. I think that's all from my end, because we have covered a lot of commands related to the pod over here, and the rest of the commands we will just talk about later on because that will take some extra time. So because this was the very first section or first practical day, so let's not bombard lot of things on the first day. So any doubts so far within this, or anything that is not clear? Okay, I think all good, and try to practice at your end and start create the cluster today only and start practicing it, so that things will be clear to you guys as well. Anything, any doubts so far, we can definitely discuss over the WhatsApp or maybe on the next day morning. Thank you so much for joining. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.